Hello and welcome to Language Ladder. Today we are going to discuss another interesting poem by Robert Frost called Fire and Ice. Have you ever seen a film or read a book on the end of the world? Well, why am I talking about the end of the world? Because the poem that we are going to read next is based on a similar theme. So before we actually read the poem, let's look at what made Robert Frost write about this theme.
So this poem was written in 1920, only 2 years after the First World War had ended and the world had just seen a massive destruction. Another inspiration could have come from Inferno, an epic poem written by Dante in the 14th century. A part of this poem showed how sinners or wrongdoers were punished. It showed a fiery hell where people were punished for their crimes in a freezing lake where ice is reaching up to their neck. I could find this black and white painting to give you an idea of what it looked like. You can see in the painting the frozen lake and these people suffering for their crimes. And at the back you can see a devil here watching over them. So the idea of fire and ice could have come from there. Thirdly, a conversation between Robert Frost and the astronomer Harlow Shapley could have given rise to this subject. They talked about how the sun will either explode or the earth will slowly freeze. So one of these, or maybe all of these, could have inspired Robert Frost to write about a poem discussing how the world will come to an end. Now let's read the poem. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. Now let's see what these two words mean. Perish means to die or to be destroyed, and suffice means to be enough. So in the first two lines, the poet points out what different people have to say about how the world will end. Now look at the words highlighted in red, fire and ice. So the poet presents these two natural elements as the two forces of destruction here. He says some people believe that the world will burn and some people believe that it will freeze, both resulting in the end of the world. Now let's look at the next two lines. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. Tasted of desire. This phrase perhaps refers to what he or the poet knows of desire or what his experience of desire is. And the phrase I hold with those could mean agree with those. So the poet agrees with those who believe that the world will end in fire. Here, the poet draws a connection between fire and desire. You must have heard of the phrase burning desire. So desire and fire are very often linked. Here, if we read fire as the symbol of desire, it represents the destructive side of it. Desire can lead to greed. When we want more of something, it could be more food, more water, more land, more money, more power. And this desire to have more of everything can lead to destruction or the end of the world. Now let's look at the next part of the poem. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. Interestingly, in the very next line he adds, if the world has to perish twice or come to an end a second time, it would be due to ice. Here, the poet links ice with hate. So the ice here symbolizes hatred or lack of compassion, when we don't feel others' pain. So the poet says, I know enough of hatred, and it is as destructive as desire and is capable of destroying the world. So it is important for us to pause here and think. The poet doesn't say the world will come to an end because of a natural calamity. In fact, he talks about the role of humans in bringing about the destruction of the world. His emphasis on the power of desire and hatred strongly suggests that these two human emotions can lead to the end of the world. So now let's look at the poetic devices used in the poem. In the first two lines, you will notice the repetition of the phrase, some say. This is called anaphora. It is the repetition of a word or an expression at the beginning of a phrase, clause, or sentences that come one after the other. So why do you think the poet has used anaphora here? Perhaps he has used anaphora to point out the two groups of people predicting how the world will come to an end. Next, look at the highlighted letters in hold and those. Both of these words have common vowel sound, long O, hold, those. So this repetition of vowel sound in different words in the same line is called assonance. So perhaps the poet has used assonance here to point or emphasize that he agrees or holds with those who say the fire will lead to the end of the world. Here we can also see the use of enjambment. You will notice that there is no punctuation mark after the word desire. So the first line runs into the other. So when one line runs into another without a comma or a full stop, it is called enjambment. So the poet could have used enjambment here to suggest the continuity of the same idea as we move from one line to another. Next, you will notice that the words highlighted in the same color rhyme with each other. So if we label words ending with the same sound, we can determine the rhyme scheme. So here fire, desire, fire rhyme with each other, and if we label this as A, ice, twice, ice, suffice. If we label that as B, and hate and great rhyme with each other, and if we label that as C, we can determine the rhyme scheme. And the rhyme scheme would be A, B, A, A, B, C, and B, C, B. And if you look at the highlighted letters carefully, you could guess the poetic device used here. World will favor fire. So world will start with the same sound, wah, and favor fire start with the same sound, fa. So here we have alliteration. Now it's time to take a quick look. So Fire and Ice is a symbolic poem. Fire symbolizes desire or greed, and ice symbolizes hatred or lack of compassion. And the poem begins with what different people have to say how the world will come to an end. Some say our uncontrolled desire will lead to the end of the world. Some feel that hatred is equally capable of destroying the world. And the poem explores how human emotions such as desire and hatred can lead to the end of the world.
Thanks for watching our video. If you found this useful, then don't forget to like it and do subscribe to our channel to get the updates. In case you have any questions or suggestions related to the poem, do drop them in the comments below.